Hey, this is Guy from Wound Collector. This is a list of the guitarists that had a massive influence on me as a player and whose style I often copied certain items from to make it all my own. Be aware this is in a random order, more or less, so it's no real preference, just 10 guys that majorly influenced my guitar playing. So let's get to it. Morgan is a bit of a special case for me. I'm a massive fan of Marduk. And the thing that I always liked about Marduk is, yeah, they go fast and yeah, they blast, but Morgan is so good in writing memorable, catchy riffs, which is not that easy if you're playing black metal at 900 miles an hour. So the fact that he manages to actually get some decent hooks and some nice melodies in there, even if it's brutal as hell, is always a very big plus. Also, the guy pretty much taught me what it was like to have endurance because seeing him live and trying to play along to Marduk songs in the beginning, boy, that's not easy. I can tell you, it's definitely cramp style for a while, but as soon as you nail that perfect pitch and that perfect riffing for several of their songs, it just makes your day a lot better, which is kind of weird because black metal is supposed to be evil and whatnot, but hey, it works. And if you don't believe me, try playing a song like, for example, Slay the Nazarene at full blast. You'll know what I mean. Next on the list is Gregor McIntosh from Paradise Lost, the British Doomsters. Even though they did pretty much any which way style these last couple of years before coming back to Doom. Now, why do I like Greg McIntosh so much? Because he's one of those guitarists that the moment you hear him play a couple of notes, you know it's him. He's one of the few guitarists that I know that can make metal sound so melancholic and yet so beautiful and also kick a lot of ass. It's pretty impressive actually how he does it. But then again, it's his melody playing that really got me. Paradise Lost was one of the first bands that actually convinced me that if you get the melody right, you can do a lot of great things, especially if you want to keep it a little bit more down tempo or a little bit sadder, even if the rest of your song feels like it's rather upbeat. So, yeah, melody lines is what I got from Greg. Definitely. Truth be told, I did wonder whether to include this next entry due to recent events, but what the hell, I cannot deny that this guy had a massive influence on my rhythm guitar skills, and that's John Schaefer from Iced Earth. Like a friend once said, I always knew he was a solid 7 on the Ted Nugent scale, but then he got picked up for being one of those crazy protesters at the Capitol in Washington, and I honestly do not know how I feel about this, but I'm going to leave that aside for a moment and just tell you why he's been such a big influence on my guitar playing. Because Schaefer is one of those guys that is incredibly tight and can develop insane speeds at the same time, yet keeping everything clear and concise. It's a tough job to pull off. I mean, a lot of guitarists can play really fast, but then it gets sloppy, and others can keep things really tight but never get those insane speeds. And even though what Schaefer plays isn't that technical, if you just break it down to its core components, it's pretty straightforward melodic US heavy metal, sure, but it's the right wrist technique that makes it all the more engaging. I mean, try and doing well, there are so many songs that he gets to insane. So try Wolf, for example. Wolf from the Horror Show album. That's one. You could also go for Dante's Inferno on the crap. I forgot the title just for a second. Um, I'm sure Burnt Offerings. Thank you. Suddenly came to me. And I mean, yeah, he was one of those guitarists that I used to play along to all the time. Nowadays, I'm not so sure, but there's no denying that he did have a massive influence on my guitar style. So, hence his inclusion on this list. The next one was pretty much a no-brainer. I mean, Chuck Schuldiner of Death, the guy was a legend. Too sad that he passed away so soon. Unfortunately, who knows what he could have brought us. But Chuck Schuldiner was one of those guitarists that actually made me realize that you can play technical stuff and still keep it engaging enough for people that are not necessarily into technical music. Sure, the first two Death albums, not my favorite, great albums, but not my favorite ones. It all started for me with Human, which is to me still one of his best symbiosis between melody and technicality. I mean, Chuck could riff some pretty catchy and nasty, gnarly riffs, and then infuse it all with a melody that soared to incredible levels. It's sad to say that I haven't really heard any other guitarists that have that same perfect blend. Now, maybe I just haven't discovered them yet. That's also a possibility, but to me, Chuck will always be special. So fair enough, there is no metal without blues, and growing up with a dad who was a blues fanatic, you could say I didn't really have that much choice in the matter, but, well, I could do worse because he introduced me to B.B. King. And B.B. King is one of those guitarists that I really look up to because of his soloing style. Okay, fair enough, it might not be the most technically proficient guitarist around, but, and he is still around at the time of this recording, but his command of the high notes and that vibrato, and it's one of those guitarists, like I said with Greg McIntosh. If you hear him, you instantly know who it is, and that's a very big plus to me in my book. Also, B.B. King made me realize that you don't have to be a wizard on the guitar neck to play engaging solos. And seeing as I'm not the best solo guitar player out there and I focus more on riffing, that's actually a nice thing to know. So if I play solos, they're very often based on what B.B. King tries to do without claiming that I can match his style, obviously. Going from solo straight to maximum riffage, I've got Dino Cazares, formerly of Fear Factory, or still of Fear Factory, it's kind of unclear, and Assassino, and Brujeria, and God knows what else. This guy, I don't know what to say. I mean, if you want it tight, and you want it fast, and you want it insane, then you go to Dino Cazares. He's still got the chops, by the way, so that's pretty bloody impressive. I mean, he's got some age. I'm not saying that he's an old geezer yet. Hear me out. But Dino just has that riff style. It's not that he plays that many notes because he can. He actually can shred like a motherfucker. I'm not even kidding. But what Fear Factory made me realize is that you just need the right notes to make a riff engaging. If you listen to something like Self-Bias Resistor, which has a melody, but if you listen to the basic riff, or Slave Labor, by the way, there's a very few notes, but it's the tightness and the rhythm of the riff that makes it all so massive. And that's something that few can pull off. And Dino's got that. And, well, I still can't play most of the stuff that Fear Factory does or did. I try to, but it really physically hurts. And yes, I'm sure that practice would make that go away, but I like to think it's because the man is a legitimate god. It's good to see that Andreas gets some more love nowadays because Sepultura is still going strong after all these years, and sure, you get the entire discussion whether or not you prefer Sepultura with Max Cavalera or without him with Derek, but to be honest, they're two totally different bands, and I will be the last to disagree that Sepultura has made a couple of, let's call them, less interesting albums in the Derek age, but what the hell, these guys can still pull it off, and especially now these latter years, they've really found their stride again. And a big part of that is, of course, Andreas Kisser, who is one of those guitarists that I, as a kid, looked up to because it was like, wow, a metal band from Brazil, and they play cool music, and they've got a very cool guitarist who can do funky solos, and I don't mean funky as in funk, I mean like solos I'd never heard before. Couple that with some very cool riffs that he came up with, and voila. I mean, come on, the riff from Arise or Chaos AD, or heck, anything pre-Roots. I mean, I love Roots. I really, really love Roots, but everything that the guys did before that, if you just listen to the guitar, it's actually very, very, very underrated at times. And sure, you can say Most of those albums are still classics, and you would be right. But I feel it's often overlooked, and Andreas is very often overlooked as being one of those guitarists that if you grew up and became a teenager during the, let's say, 90s, he's one of those guys that really influenced a lot of guitar players, especially me. Yeah, you've got your Dimebag as well, but still, Andreas has a bigger influence on me, so that's why I include him on the list to give him some much needed love. Now I get it, and we're getting to, well, you could say a top three, but I didn't list these guys in order, sort of, except maybe the three that are now coming. Brian May. Well, yeah. Brian May is one of the two reasons I picked up a guitar. It's hard to describe what feeling Queen had or what influence Queen had on me as a child, because the operatic scale, the grand scale of it all, the way their songs are arranged, the fact that Queen is one of those few bands that can pull off literally any style and still sound like Queen and still sound awesome is mind-boggling. And Brian May was a big part of that, but then Queen is one of those bands that became bigger because of all the separate parts. I mean, every one of these guys was a massively awesome musician, period. And Brian May just sticks with me the most because, well, seeing him as a very young kid and then seeing the video clip for I Want It All, it instantly made me fall in love with Queen. And I Want It All is a pretty hard-rocking song by Queen. And then later on I discovered the operatic side and then blew me away, but that was more Freddie then. But still, seeing Brian May shred out a solo with that very typical sound of his with his own custom-built guitar and his penny, yeah, he makes me want to think about rearranging songs. I absolutely love Axel Rudy Pell. He's well, I think he's underrated. I'm sure that people in Germany know him better, but over here, I'm not really that certain. Still, he deserves all the attention and love that he gets because he's clearly influenced by Ritchie Blackmore. He makes no qualms about it, that's very obvious. But for some reason, Axel Rudy Pell grabs me more than Ritchie Blackmore, and yes, I know, blasphemy, shoot me. It's just, he has bluesy overtones, but he still rocks hard, and he also has the balls to always write those very sappy ballads. And confession time, at times I really enjoy a really sappy 80s ballad. I'm sorry. And I think hard rock and metal bands should make more ballads or power ballads because it seems like a forgotten art. And the same thing goes for very long and extensive songs that are not necessarily proggy masterpieces, but I mean, Axel Rudy Pell's most famous song is probably Carousel, and that clocks in a roughly 7 minutes 30, I think, which is not massively long, considering that, for example, Dream Theater has songs that last easily 30 minutes. But not enough bands do it, and yes, I know occasionally people will gripe that some of his longer songs repeat themselves too often, but Axel Rudy Pell is one of those guys that you need to see live. Now, unfortunately, I've never seen him in the flesh live. I do own a live DVD, and I wish I was there. But he has that feel and that sound with the Stratocasters that really grips me, and he can switch from speed metal to bluesy hard rock to woefully underrated love songs at the drop of a hat. And that's what I appreciate in the guy. Also, the fact that he plays solos in a really weird way just makes me love him all the more because there are not many guitarists that I know that play the solos that he does. And they might seem simple if you see him play it, but if you try it yourself, you'll quickly notice that you're missing several components, namely the fact that he knows what he's doing. Yes, and now we come to my personal god, who will always be number one, no matter what. It might be strange that I didn't pick his brother Angus, but everybody picks Angus, so that's not really fair. Besides, it's not true. Yes, I adore Angus. I love him, everything he does. I love his Chuck Berry solos, really I do. But the one that often gets overlooked and who was a bigger influence on me is Malcolm. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a tighter rhythm guitarist anywhere, to be honest. I mean, he often gets drowned out in the overall sound because, rightfully so, a lot of the attention goes to Angus with all his wacky antics and stuff, and he's a very good player in his own right, but Malcolm never gets all that much love, which I really find rather strange. He's the one that actually made me want to pick up a guitar, not Angus. He's the one that inspired me to become a better rhythm player, which I still strive to do every single day and every single practice. He's the guy that made me realize that sometimes a well-placed note or a single chord can do a lot more than a sequence of notes or chords. You just have to pick the right one. And yes, I'm aware that a lot of people will say that AC/DC pretty much made the same song for their entire career, but I call bullshit, by the way. People say that about Motorhead as well, which is also bullshit, by the way. But what do you want if you get, in essence, Chuck Berry on steroids? You get great chemistry, you get a great band, you get a enormous number of insanely popular songs and awesome songs and excellent albums. And the best part is, my favorite album by AC/DC isn't even their best known. That's Powerage, by the way. That was my first, which my dad gave me when I was, well, I think I could barely walk. And I've still got it, by the way. Still got the original one. So yeah, Malcolm, he's sorely missed. He's one of those few artists that when he passed away, it actually really did something to me emotionally and made me realize how much a lot of my playing style is actually emulated on his playing style. All right, so thank you for watching. Thank you for taking the time to watch me go on about a couple of my favorite guitarists. If you want to know more about any one of these in more detail, just drop a comment below. If you want me to tackle other topics, other musicians, other bands, stuff, just drop me some notes below again and give me suggestions. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to make some more videos concerning music and possibly film, but mostly music. So yeah, just let me know, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye bye.